He told her things he never told his wife, but they never even touched. It started with a joke, a meme, nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate, just something small, something only she would understand. And for the first time in weeks, he smiled, like a man who hadn't felt seen in years. He didn't flirt, he didn't cross any visible lines, but the way he lingered in conversation, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way he paused, waiting for her reaction, it all said more than his words ever could. Most emotional affairs don't begin with lust. They begin with emptiness, not with seduction, but with recognition. You don't see it coming, not when it's just two co-workers laughing in the hallway, not when it's just checking in after a long day, but little by little the space between them becomes charged, not with desire, but with longing. If you're watching this and wondering if it's happening to you, you're probably already in it, because emotional desire doesn't knock loudly. It slips in, quietly, through kindness, through empathy, through someone finally asking, "Are you okay?" and meaning it. Some men don't go looking for another woman. They go looking for a place to breathe, a space where they feel heard, where no one nags or corrects or reminds them of what they haven't done, where someone actually listens, where someone still laughs at their jokes, where someone looks at them like they still matter. And you didn't mean to become that space, but here you are. The person he opens up to when life feels heavy, the person he texts when his wife walks out of the room. You tell yourself it's just friendship, that you're just a good listener. But deep down, you know something's shifted, because what's happening here isn't lust. It's something far more dangerous. It's emotional starvation, not from cruelty, not from neglect, but from routine, from 15 years of being functional, but not felt. From being a provider, a problem solver, but never someone truly seen, and then you appeared. You didn't ask for this, you didn't plan it, but now you feel something too. It's not physical, it's not dirty, but it is intimate, and that's what confuses you the most. So what is this? What are you to him, and what is he becoming to you? To answer that, let me tell you a story. Her name was Jessica, 43. Divorced 3 years, 2 teenage kids, working long hours, managing everything alone, barely remembering what it felt like to be seen as a woman. Not just a mother, not just a name on an email. He was Mark, 51, married for 22 years, 2 grown kids. He didn't talk about his wife much, but when he did, his voice got flat, like he was describing a roommate, not a partner. They worked on the same floor, different departments, but somehow they kept bumping into each other. It started with quick smiles in the hallway, then coffee breaks, then longer conversations about everything and nothing. One day, he stayed behind after a meeting. She was the last one packing up. He looked at her and said, "You're one of the few people here I can actually talk to." And for a second, Jessica felt something click inside her chest. Not fireworks, not butterflies, just warmth, connection, recognition. She didn't think much of it until the next day, when he sent her a quote about resilience. No comment, just the quote. And somehow it felt like he was speaking directly to a part of her she didn't even realize was still listening. Soon, it became routine. A good morning text before meetings. Meme a song, a line from an old movie. They never talked about anything physical, never hinted at crossing a line, but she noticed the way he remembered small details. The way he asked how her son's interview went, the way he noticed when she changed her earrings. He made her feel seen, valued, important, and in return, she listened. She let him talk about the stress at home, how distant things had become, how lonely it felt to sleep next to someone who stopped asking how your day was. Jessica didn't know when it happened, but one day she caught herself smiling at his name lighting up her screen. She caught herself waiting for his messages, and she realized he wasn't just someone she talked to at work anymore. He was starting to matter, not as a friend, not as a colleague, but as something else, something deeper. She hadn't planned it, he hadn't promised anything, but the space between them had changed. It wasn't neutral anymore, it was charged. She looked at him differently now, listened more carefully, felt a tug in her chest when he talked about how stuck he felt at home. And one afternoon, when he looked her straight in the eye and said, "I feel lighter when I'm with you," she smiled, but inside her heart dropped. Because she knew. She wasn't just listening, she was holding space, becoming something she never intended to be. His escape. What had started as harmless connection was no longer harmless, not emotionally. So, what were the signs? What are the moments that signal when a married man is beginning to desire you? Even if he doesn't say it out loud, let's break it down. You don't fall into emotional intimacy all at once. It starts the way dusk falls, quietly, almost kindly, a soft shift in the air. And before you know it, night has arrived. You didn't mean for him to feel closer to you, but somehow, something in his tone changed. What used to be short and professional now holds a kind of hush, like he's speaking into a space that only exists between the two of you. He still says your name, but now it feels like it matters when he says it. He still asks about your day, but waits longer for the answer, and when you speak, he listens like it's the only real thing he's heard all day. It's not what he says, it's how it lands, how it lingers. That's how emotional drift begins, not with actions, but with attention, and then, slowly, he begins to appear more. A message here, a meme there, a song that reminded him of you. No demands, no pressure, just these little strings tying your day to his. At first it feels like coincidence, then it feels like habit. Eventually it becomes expectation. And what's dangerous isn't the messages themselves, it's that when they don't arrive, you feel the absence. It's not what he's texting, it's what he's reaching for, a place to be heard, a soft presence. You. There's a quiet moment, maybe over coffee, maybe through the screen, when the conversations shift. He tells you he's been feeling off, that the house is cold, even when the heater's on, that she doesn't laugh anymore, that he doesn't either. And you listen, because what else can you do? You know what that loneliness feels like. You've tasted it in your own ways, but this isn't just him sharing. This is him placing his inner world in your hands, not recklessly, intimately. Suddenly, you're the person who knows, who sees, who understands. The version of him that no one else seems to reach anymore, and it feels heavy and kind of beautiful and quietly dangerous, because now, without asking, you've become his place to land. There's a shift, too, in the way he watches you watch him. He starts asking for your opinion on small things, shirts, songs, haircuts, presentations, but it's not feedback he's after, it's affirmation. He doesn't want you to correct him, he wants you to confirm him, to remind him through your eyes that he's still a man worth noticing. And when you say something kind, he softens, just a little, like your words patch something invisible inside of him. You don't say anything at first, but you notice the way he starts mirroring you, your words, your interests, the books you mention, the way you phrase things. It's subtle, but now he isn't just showing you himself, he's curating himself for you and time. Time becomes his love language. He rearranges his schedule to match yours, walks the longer way just to see you in the hallway, sits closer, stays longer. Text messages slip in at odd hours, not because anything's urgent, but because you've become in part of his quiet rhythm. He doesn't say it, but everything about how he's spending his time tells you exactly where his heart is drifting, and that's when it gets real. Because now, you're no longer confused about what's happening. You know, you may not have touched, You may not have crossed any visible lines, but emotionally, he's already stepped out, and you're no longer just a woman he trusts. You're the woman who now holds the version of him his wife no longer gets. Maybe you didn't ask for this. Maybe you didn't expect it. But now that it's here, you feel it. So pause. Ask yourself the questions no one else will. Does he speak to anyone else with this kind of softness? Does he open up to others the way he opens to me? Am I just being kind, or am I becoming his emotional refuge? Because when all of these moments start to overlap, when words, presence, time and attention start folding into each other, you are no longer in neutral territory. You are in the space where emotional intimacy lives, and where emotional heartbreak begins. And it's not your imagination, it's real. The question is not whether it's happening. The question is, why? Why do some men, stable on the surface, start drifting toward another woman emotionally? To answer that, we have to leave the surface and go into the hidden places, the unconscious. That's where Carl Jung comes in. Let's go deeper. It doesn't make sense how a man who seems loyal, responsible, even predictable, starts emotionally drifting toward someone else. He doesn't wake up and plan it. He doesn't look in the mirror and say, "Today, I'll find another woman to confide in." No, it's quieter than that, more unconscious. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Because that's what this is, not infidelity, not betrayal, but emotional fate disguised as connection. A man feels a void, not always a dramatic one, just a quiet ache. Maybe his marriage isn't broken, but it's dry, predictable, safe, but without spark. Familiar but without recognition. He still brings home groceries, still pays the bills, still mows the lawn, but no one has asked him, "How are you really?" in years. So when someone finally does, when you do, it doesn't feel like temptation. It feels like rescue. But Jung would say what he sees in you may not be you at all. It may be his projection, because deep inside every person is an invisible figure Jung called the anima, the inner feminine within every man. She holds his unlived tenderness, his longing to be seen, his hunger to feel alive again. And when he meets a woman who awakens that inner world, he doesn't fall for her as she is. He falls for the version of himself that he's hidden for too long. So he projects. He projects his anima onto you, not intentionally, not manipulatively, but naturally. Suddenly, you are not just you. You are warmth. You are softness. You are everything he forgot he needed. And in turn, you begin to feel something too, not because you planned it, but because he's offering you a mirror, a reflection of how desirable, wise, intuitive, and needed you are. It feels powerful. It feels sacred. But here's the truth. When two people connect through projection, they're not truly seeing each other. They're seeing symbols. He's not seeing you. He's seeing what he's missing. And you may be seeing what you hope love can still feel like. Jung called this the emotional transference trap. Two people exchanging energy, emotion, and meaning, without ever fully understanding what part of the other is real and what part is personal. Myth, and like all myths, it feels bigger than life until it isn't, because one day he pulls back, he grows cold, he contradicts himself, and you're left wondering, was it all in my head? No, it was real, but it wasn't grounded. It wasn't built on truth. It was built on unconscious hunger. Jung warned that when we do not own our inner emptiness, we search for others to fill it. But no one can do that forever. So what you thought was emotional intimacy may have been his attempt to borrow your light to fill his shadow, and that's why it feels so intense and so unclear. Because you weren't just talking to a man, you were talking to his unlived life, his unmet needs, his unspoken grief, and he wasn't just drawn to you. He was drawn to the version of himself he saw through you. So what do you do with that? How do you protect yourself when even sincerity can be misleading? You come back to consciousness. You ask the hard questions. Am I being loved, or am I being used as a mirror? Does he know me, Or just need me to feel like himself again? Am I in this because I see clearly, or because I needed to be seen? Because when you answer those questions honestly, you take back your power. You're no longer just a symbol in someone else's story. You become the author of your own, and that, Jung said, is how individuation begins, when we stop living from our projections and start living from our truth. So here you are, standing in a space you never meant to enter. No lines were crossed, no promises made, no scandals, and yet something inside you feels heavier than it should. You didn't ask to be desired. You didn't want to be someone's secret, hope or emotional escape, but it happened. And now the question isn't, did this go too far? It's, what do I do now? Because even if he never touched you, even if it was just words, you know what it felt like. You know what it meant to both of you. That's the part that hurts, and that's the part you need to face. Carl Jung said, "We don't get enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And this is your darkness now, not shame, not guilt, but a moment of seeing things clearly, maybe for the first time. He was hurting, and so were you. He needed to be seen, and maybe so did you. But that doesn't mean this is love. This is proximity. This is projection. This is two souls accidentally leaning on each other instead of standing on their own. The hard truth: if a man cannot face his emptiness alone, he will always need someone else to carry it. And no matter how special he makes you feel, you were not meant to carry his soul. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who chooses you fully, freely, and in the light, not someone who whispers his truth in borrowed moments. Not someone who rearranges his day, but not his life. Not someone who gives you his heart, but not his freedom. So now, it's your turn, not to wait, not to wonder, but to choose clarity over confusion, peace over longing, self-respect over emotional dependency. Not because you didn't feel something, but because what you felt deserves to be held by someone who is free to love you back. This is not about judging him, it's about protecting yourself, because if you don't, you'll become someone else's half-story, someone else's secret chapter, and you were never meant to be hidden. You were meant to be loved in full daylight, by someone whose heart is whole enough not to lean on you, but to stand beside you. And so the question is no longer, does he love me? But do I love myself enough to walk away? Have you ever been someone's emotional escape? Not the one they kissed, but the one they confided in. The person they turned to at midnight, but never made space for in the light of day. Have you ever loved someone who only existed in the spaces between his real life? If so, this is your moment to reclaim your peace, to choose clarity over confusion, to remember that your worth is not in how deeply you feel, but in how clearly you protect what you deserve. You're not alone in this. There are thousands of women who've walked that same road of almost love, of half connection, of emotional intimacy that never became reality. And maybe, just maybe, by speaking it aloud, you can set yourself free. Share your story in the comments. Let this be a space of honesty, of courage, of healing. We're listening, and we see you.